Jori Davis turned a global professional basketball career into a mission-driven movement to protect and empower athletes. In this episode, we dive into her journey from overseas courts to the founder seat at Wevolv, where she's building the infrastructure that today's athletes actually need. We talked about contract transparency, NIL chaos, gender gaps in opportunity, and why real change starts before the agent ever gets involved. If you care about athletes, equity, or building something from the ground up, this conversation delivers. Enjoy. Welcome to Legacy Unscripted, sponsored by Progeny Coaching. This is the podcast where sports and business collide. As always, I'm your host, Russ Katzman, and here we skip the fluff and get straight to the hustle. From athletes turned entrepreneurs to impact-driven business leaders, we dive into the wins, the lessons, and some of those failures that make our legacies worth living. Today, I'm happy to welcome Jori Davis, founder and CEO of Wevolv. Jori, welcome to the show.
Hi, Russ. Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you taking the time. So, as an athlete, you became acutely aware of the gap in women's sports, specifically for WNBA players. Tell us about that and what drove you to start Wevolv.
Yeah, the gap that I saw for women's sport in general, obviously, I was drafted, but I spent the majority of my pro career abroad, was just the whole ecosystem was not as mature as I would see for my male counterparts and peers. One of the key things was just across the board, truthfully, I can't really say that pay transparency was something that only women was facing, especially
Yeah.
abroad and other non-traditional sports, because it's kind of across the board, men and women. I will say the representation, the level, and the amount of validation certain representatives, our managers, and the people around us weren't as validated or tracked in the way that the male game had. And so that really just made me feel like we needed to create our own systems to better protect ourselves, but also to better advocate for ourselves. Again, I'll say that across the board, it wasn't just women. 60%, over 60% of the basketball arbitration issues that went to court abroad were Americans. They were all for American basketball players. That's over 60% of those. And Americans are probably the minority of the
Yeah.
European global basketball landscape. And so that spoke volumes to me. And that's where I realized there was a issue with just our segment of the group. But then as I started to dig deeper, I realized it was something that others were facing as well, for as lack of transparency, lack of protection, and also just lack of education.
Well, I find it interesting because quite often you'll hear people talk or write or whatever about, oh, this player or that player went over to play in Europe because they can get paid more there, or they've got a better, to use your term, ecosystem over there for players than what we have here, a better chance of playing overseas than they do here. Is that true? Is that not true? What did you find in that specific vein of what we're hearing here versus what's really happening overseas?
Yeah, I think it was true for the WNBA players to some extent. Of course, Diana Taurasi played for one of the richest men
Yep.
in women's basketball abroad. So, of course, for her, it was true. She got
Yeah.
treated like a queen. She was dealing with someone that would give them just huge bonuses and they could go wherever on someone else's dime. Totally different than the majority of athletes. I mean, she lived the experience that maybe some male players abroad probably haven't lived. So
Mm.
again, for some of those players that had control of their platform and was able to control the narrative of overseas versus WNBA, it was true. However, for the majority, in some cases, it is not true. Um, and that's where it's just that gray area. Can you make more money when you think of everything's paid? Taxes are covered. You can't be double taxed. And so you come home with that money, you might be paid in euros. So now you come home, you get a little bit of bump up for the exchange rate, depending on when you were getting paid in your euros, etc. Yes, you come out a little bit better if you're looking at the rookie contract and you're looking at maybe a second year and you can't make that type of money. And but again, it's relative, because at the end of the day, you're still not home. You're still not building your own home in space where you're going to
Yeah.
ultimately have to retire, which has its downfalls as well. So for the upper echelon athletes, yes, they were able to go over. Maya Moore, I think, was also close to 1 million. Brittany Griner, I think apparently she hit over 500,000. And of course, the big contract, Diane Taurasi, they gave her 1 million to stay and not play in the W.
Yeah.
Those are, again, your top 20 players, or maybe 30. Outside of that, the salaries start to get a little bit more humbling. Maybe some people hit six figures, but um, it's a gray area. It's not true for everyone.
And the average player, to what you were saying at the beginning, the average player doesn't have the capability to surround themselves with the right advisors and ecosystem, or they don't know to ask the right questions. What does it come down to?
Both, truthfully, Russ. I think some players don't know the right questions to ask. Question asking is hard. I mean, people take
Yeah.
courses and learn how to ask good questions. So again, it's not something that we can just say, oh, ask questions. Clearly there are people that actually learn and try to really understand, how do I ask better questions. And then second, I think it's also that building a team is something that comes with money. So again, we always study the upper echelon. We see LeBron has these people around him, or they put, oh, the new NFL guy, he has a woman agent, and look at his team. Those
Yeah.
guys are paying for their team. I spoke to someone in lifestyle management for high level athletes just the other day, and she was saying the things they take care of. And I'm like, God, I wish I could take my trail of calls for Wevolv, come back from practice, and someone has cooked, taking care of the things. I have to do that on my own. I have to
Yeah.
book my ticket for the speaking engagement I have in Barcelona, and then make sure I'm back, and then tell the coach. I don't have anyone doing that for me. And that's where it's also understanding who can actually afford a team and who can't, and what the other 99% needs in order to be able to still manage themselves, because they're possibly still living the same lifestyle from a schedule standpoint as some of these other guys.
So give us an idea then. Let's get real specific about this for the users, or for the listeners that are out here listening to us, because the average one of them will not have an idea of what Revolve is. So how do you advocate? What is it that you are doing specifically for these athletes?
Yeah, more specifically, the ultimate goal is to create a system that unlocks actionable information and data to help athletes make more informed decisions and due diligence of who they hire, and have a more equitable stake in the industry. And what that means is that when I onboard Wevolve, and the most common thing is around the contract. I can upload a
Yeah.
contract, and based on historical contracts that our model continues to get smarter with athlete contracts, I can upload a contracts, and based on that, and based on the rules and regulations, I will have my contract automatically redlined and prompt me on things to look out for, with some educational tips and negotiations tips. That's the first thing. And from there, we also know if you sign that contract, we know where you are, far as if you're in Italy, etc. Let's say it's an agent or team contract you haven't signed. What our system can do is automatically connect and ask those former players or active
Mm.
players, hey, someone's in negotiations right now. What would you tell them? So now we can
Oh, that's pretty cool.
instantly get you insight from those that have already been through it before you make that next step. And again, we get that objectively. So then you have more power. So it's like you're backed by historical former and active athletes with information that's going to empower you. It's not just one tool, it's a whole community and network behind you. So that's the first thing. Then, as you sign that contract and now you're in another place, that's where the world first autonomous agent for athlete career management, lifestyle management comes into play. Now we know more or less your budget. Now we know more or less, where you're going to be. And
Hmm.
so then we can help you curate a team. Obviously, you can't have a full-time team like LeBron, but maybe you can have a fractional team. Or maybe
Sure.
you have a team where you buy a course from your mental health professional, but you don't have them the same way the upper echelon would. We can then help match you based on where you are. If you need cryotherapy, if you need someone for second opinion, but you're from California, but now you're in Italy, you don't have that California doctor. That's where we start to bring these resources together and make it personalized using the
Mhm.
power of artificial and human intelligence. So that's really the scope of it, and make it your trusted companion no matter where you are throughout your career. And I believe if we can teach players to manage their careers while playing, that is a valuable life skill post career and will help them in their transition.
There's some good stuff in there. Um, all right, let's start back at kind of where you started. It's this community aspect of it,
Mhm.
of getting stuff from former players. How has that community been with being open about sharing their information? Is there any jealousy of, well, these kids are getting stuff that we never got, and some of that's coming out too, or are they open and happy to help that next generation?
Yeah, I think you have a mix of both. I think it's a trauma response, quite frankly. I think
Yeah.
there are former athletes that are still healing.
Okay.
100%, to be honest with you and transparent. I think some of us are healing, um, because when you start to reflect on your journey, there's a bit of, resentment that comes in. And then, of course, you feel like everyone has left, that, oh, they didn't care. So yeah, I think there's some that, oh, look what they're getting now. I didn't get that. I missed out. Oh, I went through this, so you have to go through it too. There's that
Yeah,
group. And
exactly.
then there's those that are actually like, hey, let's make this a better process. I'm with you. I agree. I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through. Um, and that's usually the one that's on the other side of healing and on the other side of going through that journey, which we all go through. And so the other element is just transparency in wanting to be anonymous and protected. And so for us, sharing information and sharing your truth about an entity, a sport organization, or individual, it is scary, especially if you plan to continue to work in the sport industry.
Hmm.
So you can't really tell the truth. Um, Even some providers that didn't play, but they work with athletes and they have to deal with their agents. I've heard them say, I wish I could tell the truth that I don't want them with that agent because they're just not good people.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no way for me to say it. So when I talk about what I'm building, these entities are saying, yes, it's needed because some of the people are not good people, but yet they will never say anything or never like try to find ways to say, hey, this person needs to be shuffled out of the industry. And
Yeah.
so that's where it's like, how do you build guardrails and transparency, but safe spaces to be able to share your objective truth and experience, whether that be a contract situation with a team, an agent, or a brand, etc.,
Yep.
to help alert someone, kind of like the Waze app. You can say,
Yeah.
"Hey, is there a cop still there?" Yep, he's still there, so you better slow down. So it's
Nobody uses the Waze app for that reason. No,
no,
they don't do that. It's
but
all about construction. I want to know where the construction zones
yeah,
are.
exactly. But similar concept. How do we now advocate for one another on a global scale, which will be very powerful.
So how crazy has it become for you with the onset of NIL? Right? Is it they're getting kids younger. They're
Yeah.
pulling them into contracts earlier. Parents are sitting there looking at these contracts, not knowing what to say. Are they seeking to bring you in? How are you able to get in front of some of them at an earlier point before they make some of these mistakes that are out there?
Yeah. It's not easy because I understand why it's not easy because you're just overwhelmed. And when
Mhm.
you get overwhelmed with information and now social media, you're already overwhelming yourself if you're constantly checking it, which a lot of the younger generation they are.
Yeah.
So then if you have a couple agents trying to pull you and then you have your grassroots organization trying to pull you for their own goals, that's where you get to a point where you just don't do anything, which is natural for anyone that deals with anxiety. Everyone knows
Yep.
that. And so um, I think getting to the grassroots organizations, what we found is that we have to find the right allies. We have to find the right organizations. We have to find the right platforms that are like, let's get this tool in there. Make it a part of our processes, whatever we have to do. And of course, those are your forward thinking actual real grassroots organizations that really want their kids to be protected. And so that's really how it's been when you're trying to go one athlete at a time. It is hard because they're so, the gatekeepers are now starting earlier.
Yeah.
So whoever can get that athlete, they're going to keep everyone else out because, um, as they call it, it's too many people in the pot and they don't, it makes their job harder. Like, if
Sure.
it's more people, it makes my job harder. It's too many, I don't have control. And, um, it's something that really triggers me. That control quote thing, it triggers me to my core when I hear an agent or someone say, "Well, I lose control if the parents have this and this is this," and it's like, "Whoa, this is not your life. This was not your
Yeah.
dream. So you shouldn't have control. And if you want to work for these individuals, then you should learn to do your job in a way that is transparent." And so again, that's that. But it is hard. You have gatekeepers at a very early age. You're going against everyone who's selling the dream to an impressionable kid that just wants to make it. And if we talk about South America and the African continent, it gets even harder because if I pay you your family a little bit of money, now I got you signing the contract.
Yeah.
Um, and it's crazy out there.
So who are those right allies? You talked about finding those right allies. How do you go about doing that? Is it, do you go through schools? Do you go through local, as you said, grassroots organizations? Do you go through advocacy group? Who are
Yeah.
you going to first, and who can, if anybody's listening, who can come join you in that
Yeah.
fight?
I go through my former athletes that are now the leaders of those organizations, whether that be they that work in a school now, whether that be they work at a collective, whether that be they're an agent. I go
Yep.
through them because, especially those that have played at the next level, because it is almost as if they will be so broken and tone deaf that if I say what I'm saying, that they don't get it and they don't feel some
Yeah.
type of discernment and like, I can't do this. I have to step up for this. I think that's where I go because I don't need to over explain myself when I talk to them because they
Right.
know, because they've probably faced one of those pain points along their journey in the elite levels. And that's who I go to first. And that means they are either the leader of the new marketplace, they're the leader of the new software, they're the leader of this union. They get it. Now, if they are pigeonholed like some of the unions are, by bureaucracy and politics, they'll say it's needed, but they can't let me in the door. They're like, I hope you figure it out another way because I can't. That's one thing. But that's really the key for me.
Gotcha. Now, you talk about putting together these ecosystems and helping these athletes find their ecosystems. How do those type of partners start to work with you? Whether that be people looking for sponsorships, or looking for people to sell as sponsorships, or even agents or
Mhm.
lawyers, financial advisors, those kind that would be the ones that you could trust and bring into that ecosystem. How can you find those? How do you vet them? How do you determine that they're the ones that are the right ones to let in the door?
Yeah, our community, our network of
Okay.
athletes. We created a system that allows them to be a part of that journey with us, and be a part of that growth engine. And so, um, through our systems and our technology and how we're building it, we allow for it to kind of work in that way, in a gamified way as well, while always making sure everyone's held accountable within the platform. And so that's really how we make it work. And then we they come to us also.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a little bit of like a lot of meditation and attracting. We don't want to chase, we want to attract as much as possible over here. So like,
Yeah.
like, God, please just send me. I know they're out there. I know there's other people with a heart that want to really see change and build things that help people to its
Yeah.
core. And I think we've been finding them. And there's people that have been done dirty, not even athletes, those that have been in the sports space that's like, yo, this, I've seen some bad things and whatever I can do to help, I'll help. And so those are the people we start to find.
Gotcha. No, I love this. I can't wait to see where you guys can take this as you continue to grow. Let's narrow in on you a little bit more and your business journey yourself.
Okay.
Talk to me about that transition from athlete to entrepreneur, um, athlete to businesswoman. What's that been like for you?
I would say it's been a lot of when I say internal work,
Yeah.
the outside part is hard. I mean, of course, you have dealing with tech teams and, having people learning the hard way. And, you know, we had a issue with our third co-founder who was a former athlete, actually.
Hmm.
And, learning those lessons of losing a co-founder. But I think the biggest challenge for me has been preparing for the ultimate transition. I've always been someone that always hung around old people. I believe I'm gonna be with people older than me because they've done things that I'm about to go through. So why not do that? When I was young, I
Right.
was always sitting on the porch with my grandma and my great aunts and stuff. And I've been an old soul for so long. And I think
Mm.
I've always tried to pay attention to who was before me and try to learn from them. And so I know the transition was something that was gonna be you can't really prepare. It's more so an emotional thing. You can do the resumes and stuff, but I think for me the biggest challenge has been really learning to do the inner work of learning myself, trusting my intuition, my spirit of discernment when it comes to trusting people, and not letting this business world dilute the natural vision and the hope I had for a future and how, the bright eyed I got when I was like, oh, technology could totally solve this.
Yeah.
Is it as easy to navigate because of bureaucracy and politics? No. Because of change, because of power dynamics? No. But it was more so like, in order to see this through, I had to make sure I continued to do the work on myself, to sustain the energy and the hope to get it done. And so I think for me that has been the biggest part outside of all the business, tech, etc. Truthfully.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about that. I haven't really had anybody on the pod yet in the episodes that we've had that's talked about kind of that differentiation between it's one thing to make the transition on the tech side and understand technologically what do we need to do, what do we need to have in place to have a business work. But then there's the change side, certainly on yourself, but but also introducing something like this to people that have no idea what it is,
Hmm.
and bring out something and get your community to come together to create something and to add value to something that didn't exist before, and getting out there and promoting it and talking. How have you found the public speaking? You mentioned speaking in Barcelona, getting up in front of people, speaking, being that advocate, being that face of the company. How have you found that?
It has come a little organic. I'm passionate about it. I've, I've sat overseas,
Yeah.
isolated for so long, just thinking about these things and pondering that now it's like, I get to talk about it. I've thought about this by myself
Oh,
for
that's funny.
years now. Um, so I mean, it is I think it is one of my gifts that I naturally can speak authentically from my heart. Um, and I've been able to find a way of obviously articulating my vision and how I feel and what I've learned in my experience to some extent. And of course, I have a number of stories. So when you're speaking, if you can tie what you're talking about to a story, that helps. Um,
Yeah.
so it hasn't been something that's hard. I think it's just been more so when we talk about businesses now understanding, okay, what should I be getting paid the more I do these things? And learning the same lessons I maybe didn't, maybe I learned from basketball, but now, okay, at what juncture is it you need experience to like, yeah, you've done enough experience. Let's start asking
Yeah.
for XYZ. Um, and not knowing, you just don't know when is that right time. And so for me, the speaking is like, okay, I know I'm at a point where, okay, how do I prepare for a TED talk, for example? How do I prepare
Yeah.
if I go and I do a seminar or an hour long thing? That's where now I know there's a point where I will need to level up my game if I want to really do this. Um, but speaking on panels and giving my perspective, which is very unique, and being authentic to myself has been fun and also rewarding because I've a lot of people appreciate when I leave the stage and they're like, I like that you didn't say the same generic thing.
Yeah.
And so that's been the beauty of it, of just getting people that appreciate authenticity and me just speaking from the heart.
Have you run into your detractors? People that are pushing back against what you're trying to build?
Yeah, they don't push back in a way like I'll do XYZ to make sure this doesn't happen. It's more so just like a subtle, like you're trying to take my job, or, athletes are like, athletes won't use this. You're different, like you're different, Jori. You're building something like there's only a few of you like that. Most athletes will never do this.
Mm.
Um, trying to discourage you to say like you're different. And I've thought about it because again, I've thought about it where I'm like, dang, maybe I'm building something that's for me and other athletes don't want this. And, you start to second guess yourself. And so they do it in ways that are subtle, or they don't give you the access to the rooms because, they have those keys or the right people. They safeguard those connections. Um, and so, yeah, I've run across them. I've pitched in front of them. I've pitched in front of some and added them to my pitch live.
Yes.
So it doesn't help that I am humble and soft, but also I'm very bold and standing true to what I believe. So yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, you don't hear about these other individuals in the news. You hear about us. You hear about when we go broke or when we sign a bad contract, and we're painted as the typical athlete that didn't know their business when we all had agents. So what happened to those individuals that were behind us? And so it's something that I can't pay attention to too much.
Do you feel that there's, among those detractors, do you feel that there is a pushback on you as a former athlete that's now moved into business? That, oh, well, you're just an athlete, you know, and not taking you seriously. Do you get some of that?
Yes. I mean, early on, it was definitely the stigma of, yeah, you have a good idea now. You're not going to follow it through. Like,
Mm.
yeah, and because I was still playing, that you can't totally disrespect me because I'm still a player. So if I'm calling your union, I'm still the active player. So you still, it's your job, kind of. But even though some of them still never answered, which was
Yeah.
crazy in the actual league, in the country where the union is, they still never answered, which also gave me insight into what's the reality. But it was early on where it was just kind of like this grin of like, oh yeah, another athlete, you got a good idea. Oh, it's cute. Yeah, yeah. What's your projects you're working on? That type of energy. And then it became the part where, well, you're different. You're building this, athletes don't do this, they don't respond, they're not responsive, they don't engage, etc. Um, and then it became a little bit more like, okay, you could be a threat
Yeah.
because of you are a player, you're speaking some truth. And if you get this off the ground, some things could change and we could be in trouble. And so that's really how it transitioned. But I think being an athlete, the stigma we have of not really being able to handle business, um, is it runs deep, even to some of the former athletes
Yeah.
believing it. And it's like, well, you're actually right now a GM or something, or you're running the union. So are you saying that about yourself as well? Are you saying you're also in the 10% that you think I'm also now a part of?
Yeah.
Um, so it's interesting. But I think it's also a mix of that. Some don't want the player. They need the player to be uneducated. They need the player to need certain entities in the industry, because if we don't, and we knew how to handle business and we knew how to manage ourselves, then that means things would change and certain people wouldn't have access or a job.
Yeah. Well, suddenly you'd have a choice, right? The athlete wouldn't need that agent or whomever to advocate on their behalf. They could choose to, but they wouldn't need that
Yes.
person. There's a big difference in, to your point, there's a big difference in who has the power in that relationship. Yeah, it kind of drives me nuts. And you and I had talked about it briefly during our introductory call, but kind of drives me nuts when I hear people say that about athletes relative to business. Because to me, and I've coached a number of athletes in their businesses, et cetera. And for me, the typical athlete, especially at an elite level where you are, um, they bring the intangibles that you can't teach somebody. You
Mm-hmm.
can teach somebody the function of running a business. You can walk them through who's my customer, what are their needs, what am I going to deliver to them, how do I deliver it, where do I market those channels, how do I build a relationship, how do I get paid, et cetera, et cetera. You can do all of that in working on the business side of somebody, but you can't teach them the drive and the competitive edge and how to chase your passion and how to build your identity around something that really matters to you and put a
Mm-hmm.
team around yourself that can make that happen. You can't teach that type of leadership that comes with an elite level athlete. And so, quite frankly, we've seen many athletes succeed over the years with various business ventures. I always go back to Emmett Smith, just because of the level of success he's reached, both where he reached in his game and where he's reached in the business world now. But there's, we can come up with dozens of them that are both high profile and some that fly under the radar that people don't even realize how successful they really are.
Yeah. No, I think there have been a number of athletes and entertainers, because
Hmm.
sometimes we're kind of the same, um,
Yeah.
that have gone on to do great things in business. And then, yeah, there are some athletes that it's not something they want to do. Not that they're not intelligent enough or smart enough. Some of them just don't want to be entrepreneurs and they don't want to be in
Yep.
business, and they actually just want someone to help them manage themselves, and that's okay with them, for them. Um, but I think it is a stigma that's being broken more and more this day and
Yeah.
age, and especially with the next generation. And it's just also a matter of like, at a young age we've been trained to follow and go and show up where we're supposed to. So it's the same as why was the school system created? Well, we needed to train factory workers to be able to go work in the factories.
Yep.
Same, you're training athletes to go and be a talent and perform. I think now it needs to go where we train to perform and be able to do X, Y, Z. And when you
Hmm.
do that and you actually empower them to do that, you will see the difference.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that the the best thing you're doing with this is because you're kind of going to a place where nobody has been yet, right? We've got a true blue ocean here, which means we have to educate the market, right? I always say that's the worst part about everybody wants a blue ocean. Nobody realizes how
Mhm.
much education they have to do with their market when they have a blue ocean.
Right.
But the beautiful part about that is that the one thing that we do see quite a bit in athletics is kids as they're coming up looking to that previous generation, even more so than any other profession they see in athletics. They're looking to that elite athlete that's on TV or maybe not on TV or who's going over and playing overseas and doing that kind of stuff. And as they look up to those athletes now, you are empowering those athletes and therefore empowering those that come along, even afterwards. And to those nights that you lay awake um, wondering the impact that you're really going to be able to make with this. It really, from my perspective, even if it helps one of those little girls or boys that's coming up playing athletics that can choose for themselves who that ecosystem is, can choose for themselves whether or not they want to have an agent or if they have enough power through your system or others that gives them the ability to advocate for themselves. Just change one of those, and it's
Mhm.
all worth it.
Yeah. I mean, or even just building while you're playing.
Yeah.
I've had a few, younger rookies in second year overseas, just like, oh, you've been building while you're playing. Like, yeah, that's the best way to do it, especially for a woman. Like, do start the plan. Get the
Yep.
get the template, get the skeleton ready while you're playing. Like, and think through it. Spend time. You have time right now to do it, and you have time to meditate on it. And you have time to think it through and call people and use that as leverage. Um, and so just starting to do that in general, to say you can do it while you're playing, is one step, and then, and again, like you said, you are an example and people are watching this, despite what you might think. And sometimes I'm like, nobody's watching my videos, but they are in their own way. And if something's put on your heart to do it, it's probably because the universe is like, you need to put this out into the world. And of course,
Yep,
as they say, if you don't, it's going to go to someone else's heart and they'll put it out.
that's true.
So, it's just more so like, that's what was put on my heart to do, and I'll do it. And, I believe it's a perfect opportunity, but education is key.
Yep.
And it's just another thing that people always come, well, you have to go, it's going to be hard. Well, what wasn't hard that was
Yeah.
new? Like, it's like, have we not learned from all the TikToking, educational, inspirational things out there? Like, we're still saying things are hard. Or, you have VC funds saying, we want disruption. Well, what is disruption to you? Because, like, disruption isn't safe.
Right.
And so it's these things of human nature that we say things, but are you actively doing what you say or what you promote? Um, and yeah, that comes with, I guess, with a little bit of awareness, but I do believe, it is key to walk in your purpose and what's on your heart. And again, if you inspire one, you did a part of the job.
Yep. Yeah, a ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are made for, as they say. Um,
Exactly.
so, Jory, I want to take you back in these last couple questions. I want to take you back to the beginning of this business journey for you.
Uh-huh.
Um, Talk to me about a couple of those lessons that you've picked up along the way that you wish you'd have known on day one. If somebody had said, Jory, you're going into business, you need to know this. What are those couple things?
Um, I would have, again, it's a mix of being in tech, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to a product or something along those lines, I did a lot of mapping out. But when it came to tech, I would have definitely started with more so prototype, a
Mm,
product architect person, and just really like designed with no code, nothing. Just really focused on finding that person to sit with me, think it through, show those designs to more athletes, and go from there.
yeah.
Um, Systems, I would have tried to take more time to find someone to help me understand systems and be let that be the starting foundation as well for as the information architecture and systems. Validating. I mean, research, I've always learned to research through my agent journey. I've had 5, and so I
Yep.
learned to support the research people. But I learned another layer of researching people in the business realm of just like, people will say they can do XYZ. They're this philanthropist, they're this. And, that's one thing where I learned you have to find unique ways to quickly research and validate people.
Mm-hmm.
Or you lose your money. You'll lose time and resources. Patience, I have a level of patience, but also not rushing too much, taking my time, even though we've taken a lot of time, but taking more time to
Yeah.
understand um, that, your view and what you want to build is your view. Someone can do a little bit same, but it's always going to be different, and not rush too much. Um, those were some things I've learned. Building a team is important, but I knew that. It was just that I had to learn how to build a new team. And I had to learn that those teammates that weren't from the sport space, but more corporate, I had to learn how to communicate with them.
Yep.
Um, I learned that how we communicate in sports sometimes isn't good. Like, it actually is pretty toxic. And so
Yep.
I had to also learn that, I learned sometimes I was a little passive aggressive, which is common in sport. You say certain things to get a reaction, to get you to do things, and that might not
Yep.
be the way someone else does. I had to learn that everyone isn't self-motivated like athletes. So those were some of the key things from a leadership standpoint, that corporate world, they don't communicate. They're not as ambitious or self-motivated as the culture of people I came from. And so I had to reel it back a little bit. I had to be more patient in how I communicate and how I get them to understand the goal and sense of urgency. Um, a lot of things, but those are a few that I wish I kind of knew before I jumped in, which could have helped me a little bit more. And mentors don't cost. Real mentors and help are not going to try to tax you for freaking 2K a month and all these things. Like, that's people that are consultants, totally different. And finding mentors are hard. And so, um, being clear on that. Mentorship takes time, and find mentors. It's not easy. Everyone says find mentors, but it's really not easy because a lot of them are covered as mentors, but they're actually behind the end consultants and service providers that want a fee. So one of the big ones also was just find mentors. That's another one that I think is important.
Good. I like those. I like all of them. But the vetting one I think is incredibly important. Finding ways to validate those individuals as you are working with them. It doesn't matter, sports, business, doesn't matter what you're in, right? It's everybody you have in your life. Find ways to vet and validate in a meaningful way that matters to you, that gets to the heart of who they are and whether or not you're getting the person that they say they are. So I think that's incredibly important. All right, last couple questions. Anything we haven't talked about that you want to throw out there? How can people reach out and become a part of this movement with you? Um, just give us a little bit of what people can do if they want to get involved in Wevolv and helping you to drive this forward.
Yeah, I mean, for my former athletes out there, definitely the more donations of contracts, the more donations of stories,
Mm,
to legal@wevolv.net. You can email them. We have the WhatsApp, legal WhatsApp on the website, wevolv.ai. You can send those through. It's our actual in-house lawyer that controls both of those platforms. So
okay.
it is anonymous. He'll redact whatever is needed. So for former athletes, that's great. Get on the request the app from Wevolv.ai, or you can download the app from the iOS App Store and request an invite from there. But most of all, it's really sharing of information. And then especially those service providers that want to be aligned, or former athletes that are now providers of services to athletes. Again, go on wevolv.ai and, sign up, request access so you can become a part of that network. That's really the beginning piece of it. Follow us on Instagram, Wevolv Society, and, follow me, Jori Davis 32. Far as it getting to me, I'm on LinkedIn, Jori Davis. I'm on IG. I'm very accessible. Ping me, drop me a DM on IG or LinkedIn. And, we're very responsive. Julie Wada, who's my co-founder, who actually she's still actively playing in EuroLeague in France.
Mhm.
She's more accessible on LinkedIn. She's the introvert. I'm the extrovert. She's the introvert. We make a good team, but she's more on LinkedIn than IG. But she does check it more for Wevolv purposes. But you can reach out to her as well. She'll definitely connect back. But email us, info@Wevolv, or again, if you want to donate different redacted types of contracts, or you feel there's things that, for as the legalese piece, we definitely
Yeah.
want stories. So legal@wevolv.net would be the best way to email us and get those in, or get into the app, download the app, request the invite, and start using that as well, directly, especially for those former athletes.
Okay. I appreciate that. And we will get as many of those links and emails and everything into the show notes so people can grab it from there as well in case they miss it. Jori, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you jumping on with us.
No, thank you, Russ. I appreciate the conversation. And I hope to flip it back on you for the Unguarded podcast so I can ask you some questions. So we get you on our podcast for
It
Wevolv.
would it would be wonderful. I can't wait. So that's a wrap for this episode of Legacy Unscripted. If today's conversation sparks something in you, don't just let it sit. Take action today to build your future. Make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with someone who may need to hear it. And if you've got a story to share or you want to connect, you know where to find me. Until next time, keep it real, keep it bold, and keep living your legacy.